I got my best friend's boyfriend to break up with her. Am I a hater for that? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My best friend is pretty much the girl every guy wants to be with, and every girl wants to be like. Her and I met in the 2nd grade, and we're now 22 years old. We've known each other our entire lives. Growing up, she was definitely the prettier one, and the boys definitely let us know that. She was the one getting asked out, always getting hit on, always being chased by boys, and I, on the other hand, barely got any attention from guys. I know that this created a huge problem for me, even though I never voiced it to her. I became insanely jealous every time she got a boyfriend, and worse, every time she went on a date. From the time we turned 15, she was basically going on a date every single weekend. Oh yeah, and she had the perfect parents too. They trusted her so much because she got really good grades in school, so they decided to buy her a car when she was 16. My parents, on the other hand, didn't trust me for shit. I couldn't do anything by myself. They didn't give me a car actually ever. I bought my first car when I was 19. Her and I were also just very different people. She loved being around people. She was voted most likely to succeed, and she loved theater and she was always cast in the best parts. I was more of a shy girl. I didn't like talking to guys, and if anybody ever hit on me, I always assumed that it was just like a bet or that they were trying to play me. Mostly because why would they look at me when she's standing right next to me? Now, don't get me wrong. Her and I actually have a great relationship. She comes to me whenever she has boy trouble, and I try to give her my best advice. I was also very protective of her. Girls were always jealous of her and trying to do something, and I constantly had her back. She could always come to me whenever she had a problem, and I would always be there. During prom, a girl tried to ruin her dress, so I beat her up. That's the kind of friend I was. Even though, yes, I was jealous and sometimes envious. We went to the same community college, and this is when things got bad. She started dating a new guy, and I hated him. He manipulated her at every turn, and she could never see it. So I did what I had to do to break them up. Part 2 is up. I manipulated my best friend's boyfriend to break up with her. Am I a hater? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Here are all the reasons why I hated him. He was a good boyfriend. He loved her. He procured her. He was protective and sometimes even possessive, but in a good way. The kind of possessive that every girl wants her boyfriend to be. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't envious, and he always took care of her. No matter where he was always thinking about her. He would text her a good morning text, check up on her during the day, and call her after classes every day. At this time, her and I were both still living at home, even though we were going to college. And her boyfriend would drive 45 minutes out of his way just to go drop off some ice cream if she had her period. He was tall, dark, and handsome. He was the boy every girl wanted in class. And her and I know this because once they started dating, 4 different girls came up to my best friend and told her how lucky she was to be with him because he didn't get with just any girl. He waited for the perfect girl to come around, and that was my bestie. But here's what I hate even more. I loved hanging out with them. They made me look forward to possibly meeting someone who would love me the same. He gave me hope that there were other men like him. One day, one of his best friends asked me out, and it was my lucky day. We went out to dinner and he kissed me. I actually fell in love with this guy. I had never gotten so much male attention before, but then he ghosted me. My anger began to poison me inside, and suddenly I knew I needed to break them up, because if I wasn't going to be happy, neither could they. I started silencing her phone so that when he texted or called, she wouldn't answer. And this made him angry right away. I also planted a seed, the jealousy seed. I told her that a guy asked her out and she said yes. This made him even angrier. He didn't even bother to ask her if it was true. He just assumed that I was telling him the truth. After a couple of weeks, he stopped calling her. She started crying, and it made me happy, eventually leading to them breaking up. Am I terrible? Yes or yes?
Story time about why I will never go on a date ever again. So a little background information. I was 20 years old and I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. Now, I had just gotten out of this relationship like a month before I went on this date. And I had absolutely no intentions of looking for a guy, but I was up for, flirting with them and going on some dates. Well, the one day I am at the gym in my apartment building, and there's this guy who's walking on the treadmill next to me, and I get off and he gets off at the same time, and he starts up a conversation with me, and we had started talking about how I never went jet skiing. And he was like, oh, well, do you want to go jet skiing on Tuesday? So I just decided to put myself out there. I said yes, and bam, we had a date the next day. So I meet him at his car, and we go on this date. He did end up paying, which was very nice. But anyways, we're on the jet ski, and we're in the middle of the water. I was kind of weirded out because I didn't think that we would have to be that close with each other. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never go on a date ever again. So like I said, he takes us to the beach, we get on the jet ski, and it's just 2 of us on one jet ski, which I was low-key uncomfortable about because I thought that we were each going to get our own, so there would be no touching involved. And after the shit that he pulled, I definitely wish that I had my own jet ski. So apparently he's jet skied all of his life, he knew how to do this. Well, we go pretty far out from land because he knew the people and he didn't have to listen to any of the rules. He offered to let me drive it, but I did not want to because of the fact that he was going super fast and I did not want to do that shit. Well, listen to this. He flips us off the jet ski, right? And when he does that, all of a sudden it hits me. I am in the middle of the ocean. Like, there's sharks, there's other things, there's creepy things, mysterious things we don't even know about. I literally start crying and he thinks it's funny. He gets on the jet ski and literally drives away. I'm not even joking. He left me there for 3 minutes. I could barely see land. And then he ended up coming back and he was like, ha ha ha, da da da. I never saw him.
Storytime about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. I'm definitely toxic and vindictive. So when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew what I had to do. He and I dated for 9 months. And you could say that I was a little overbearing. If you guys saw what this man looked like, maybe you'd understand. He's the type of guy that all the girls want to get with. Not only is he super handsome, but he's also very successful. And he's a great guy. Comes from a great family and he's really close to them. I, on the other hand, grew up in the foster system, so having a family was always my biggest dream. And when I met his family, they took me in right away. His mom and I essentially became best friends. His dad would take me out to dinners and lunch, and they basically adopted me as their daughter. Here's when things started going wrong. I was extremely jealous and I basically didn't let him do anything. Every time he wanted to go out with his friends, I would start a fight. Anytime he would bring up a female friend from the past, I would simply threaten to break up with him. Trust me, I recognized that what I was doing was wrong, but part of me just couldn't control myself. I was willing to do anything to make him stay with me. Eventually, he got really sick of me, started mentioning that he wanted to take a break. So that's when I told him that I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Absolutely not. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. The first time he threatened to break up with me, I told him that I was pregnant. It was obviously a lie and he knew it, so he basically still walked out on me. So in order to get his attention again, I decided to go to his family and tell them that I was pregnant. And they all believed me. His mom and dad even invited me to go live with them during the pregnancy. At first I said yes, but then I was like, hold on a second. How am I gonna fake a pregnancy? So to get myself out of that, I told him that I thought I was pregnant, but I actually wasn't. Yep, I'm starting my makeup all over again at this point. I had way too many layers on. During the time we were on a break, I basically followed him around everywhere just to make sure that he wasn't hooking up with any girls. Finally, 2 weeks later, he called me and told me that he missed me. We got back together, but the same thing happened. I was still jealous and controlling. But this time, he was becoming more and more jealous. So much so that he started trying to control the way that I was dressing. Around this time, we started having huge fights. He would punch the wall right by my head. I would throw things at him, even threw a knife at him once. But part of me liked that he was so jealous and toxic. He was obsessed with me. And he broke up with me again, and 2 months later, he was engaged. And guess what? His family invited me to their engagement party. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. That's when I get the invitation for his engagement party. At this point, it seems that my ex's parents thought we separated on good terms. So of course, I showed up to that engagement party. As soon as my ex saw me, he came straight to me and told me to leave. And I told him that I was welcome because his parents had invited me. He gave me a whole speech about how we were over and I needed to accept it. But of course, not one single part of me was willing to accept that. Then he called me an Uber, so I actually did end up leaving. When the wedding comes around, I was the first guest to show up. As soon as his parents saw me, they welcomed me. So I went and sat down at the parents' table. When my ex came out, he nearly fell over. Mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting his wife. I went up to her and told her that I was an ex of his. That's when she looked at me and said, when did you guys date? I said we dated for 9 months. And then she says that they had been dating at the same time. So then a whole bunch of drama goes down. She goes to him and starts slapping him. He starts to cry. And then his parents ask me to leave. So I did. The next month, I followed her everywhere. Finally told me to leave her alone and that they had already gotten a divorce. So my plan worked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get back with my ex. What should I do?
Storytime about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So a little background information. My parents and I moved into a new house that was literally 5 minutes from where I used to live. But I went to private school, and almost all the other kids in my town went to the public school. So I didn't really know a lot of the kids in my town. Well, a week after we moved in, our neighbors across the street invited us to a barbecue. While we were there, I started talking to our neighbor's older son, and him and I started to get along really well. Like, in a flirty way. Their older son was a senior, I was a sophomore, and their younger son was a freshman. Well, I kind of talked to the younger son, but he was just like giving me really weird vibes. So for the next few weeks, I started hanging out with their older son a lot, and we would talk all the time. Well, the one day whenever I went over their house, it was super weird. His younger brother kept saying, "Oh, I think I know you from somewhere. Like, I swear I know you." And I'm just like, okay. Well, the one morning I was waiting outside for my mom to pick me up because she worked night shifts and she would just grab me and then take me to my school. And I saw him in his window watching me like for part 2. Part 2 about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So like I said, I saw him watching me outside his window, but I didn't want to overthink it, so I was just like, no, maybe he's looking at something else. Well, this all started a month after I moved in. Well, it started happening more frequently, so then I told his older brother. We're just gonna call the younger brother Mac. So he talked to Mac and then everything was fine for a week. Just a little information real quick. For the public school, the bus would arrive at 7:40. My private school started at 7 o'clock. So my mom would come and get me at 6:15 because my school was kind of far away. So like I said, it was a week later. Every morning that I would go outside to wait for my mom, Mac would be standing on his porch watching me. Oh, but it gets worse. So one night I was in my bedroom, right? And this is like some scary movie shit. I kept seeing something run past my window. My bedroom was on the first floor. So I told my dad about it and he put cameras outside. Well, Mac's older brother told me that Mac was always interested in my life. So me being a smart ass bitch, I told his older brother that our cameras didn't work, like for part 3. Part 3 about the boy that lived across the street who used to stalk me. So like I said, I told his older brother that our cameras didn't work anymore, knowing that he would tell Mac. Because he had it in his head for some reason that Mac wasn't obsessed with me. And the reason why I told him our cameras didn't work was because Mac was watching while the cameras were being set up outside. And after that, everything stopped. Except he would still be outside every single morning on his fucking porch watching me. So the one night while I'm sleeping, I wake up to some noise right outside my window. And my bed was on the same wall as the window, so I could see who was right outside my window, but they couldn't see me. Well, I look, and guess who the fuck it is? It's Mac trying to get inside of my fucking window. So I quietly call my dad, and it's like 3 in the morning. So I tell my dad what's going on. So he goes outside and nobody's there. Well, the next day we check the cameras. There's footage of him jerking off outside my window, trying to break into my room with a fucking crowbar. Luckily, I was staying at a friend's that night. Taking pictures of me outside my window. So we showed his parents. Then we moved and they sent him to a mental hospital.
I'm paying for my husband's mistress's bills.
What?
Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you send me your confessions through here and I tell them on TikTok so you can get some genuine advice. Historically in my marriage, I have been the breadwinner. So my husband and I decided together that he would take care of the children. We had twins and I went back to work a month after I had them. Everything was fine up until they turned 7 years old. This is when I noticed that my husband was starting to get jealous and envious of my success. So much so that he would get mad at me for every little thing I did. For example, not washing the dishes the way he wanted me to wash them, doing the laundry too late, or generally helping around the house was a big no-no for him. So he's also controlling. It's almost like he was looking for any little excuse to set off. Then I realized I was walking on eggshells every single minute of the day when I was home. I started taking the kids out by myself, but my husband did not like this. He said that I was trying to monopolize the kids' time and that he wanted to spend time with them too. Wait, isn't he home with them all the time? What do you mean? 2 months ago, he confessed everything. He said that he hated me, hated my success, and that I made him feel emasculated for being so much more successful than he could ever be. He also said that I'm overbearing and controlling. Then he threatened to get a job, which I said yes to, and then he got even angrier. I'm assuming because he doesn't really want to get another job. Then he suggested that if I just let him do whatever he wants, i.e., sleep with other women, he will be happier in the relationship. This way he can feel like a man with another woman while I bring the bread home for the kids. Now, here's the thing. I do love my husband. In fact, I love him so much that I said yes to this. So here are the rules he laid down for this new situation. Apparently, he'd already been seeing somebody, didn't bother to tell me about her. All he wanted me to know was that she was younger than me and prettier. Are you okay? Every now and then he started asking me for money. I asked him what it was for, and then he said it's for you know who. It's gotten to the point where he'll just forward me her bills and have me send PayPal money. The only reason I'm doing it is because I don't want him to leave me. It would be embarrassing if my family finds out, and I would not want the kids to be without their father. But I'm getting to the point where everything is an insult. Duh. How could it not? He sent me 2 bills, one for the kid's dentist and one for a jewelry store where he got her an $800 necklace. He's never bought me anything before in my life. I've been the one to buy him every single shirt in his closet. In order for me to not get upset every time I see something, I decided to give him a checking account. In it, I put $30,000 and that's the limit for the next 3 months. I suggested couples therapy, but he laughed and told me that I was crazy for even trying. He is manipulating this so well. He knows he can get whatever he wants out of you, so he's holding this over your head in order to control you, especially financially. I think everyone in the comments is going to let you know that you're making a really big mistake. You need to find your happiness and discuss this with a very good lawyer. Good luck.
Storytime about how my fiance cheated on me with 10 other girls. So a little background information. I met this guy on Instagram and we're going to call him Bryce. Now, when him and I met, he was stationed in Korea, and he refused to ask me to be his girlfriend until he came home. So I waited an entire year for him to ask me to be his girlfriend. Which low-key should have been a red flag, but he made it seem romantic in some twisted, weird way. So fast forward, he comes home in February, and he kept to his promise. The first day that we met, he asked me to be his girlfriend. So I say yes, fast forward. Him and I start having a ton of arguments because of things that he was doing while he was in Korea. Fast forward, we're officially together for 9 months. So fast forward, of course, he gets deployed to Europe in like September of 2022. So this man decides that he's going to propose to me in July and then beg me to get married to him before he leaves. Now, I may have ignored the first red flags, but I'm not dumb. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with 10 other girls. So like I said, this man begs me to get married to him before he leaves, and thank goodness I didn't because divorce papers would have been served the same day. So fast forward, he starts acting super weird. He's going out 24/7. He's getting drunk. He's not wearing the ring that he begged me to get him. Yes, he literally begged me for a ring so that way women would know that he had a girlfriend. Well, then of course I get a DM from a girl on Instagram asking if him and I were still together. And then after talking to her, I realized he literally made a Tinder 2 days after he got deployed. And what was his excuse? Oh, I wanted to meet friends to teach me German. And listen, I was not born last night, so I kept that conversation going because I wanted to get to the bottom of what the fuck was actually going on. And then of course he finally comes clean that he cheated on me with a bunch of girls. Oh, and you want to know the icing on the cake? One of them was a minor. Yup. After I leave him, he has the audacity to ask for my ring back. But I threatened to tell.
Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sending me an Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said, yes, aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent him an Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything, but surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said, yes! And this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant. So I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me an Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do?
Storytime, is blood really thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade, and I had just started dating this guy that my friends introduced me to. He was extremely attractive, really smart, and really kind. Literally had all the traits a girl could want in a boyfriend. So him and I are talking for a while, and then we start dating, and we were amazing together. And my sister had just came back home from teaching in Thailand. Surprisingly, her and I got super close because we always used to fight with each other. And now we were inseparable. The only issue was she was 25 years old acting like a child. She always wanted to be at my boyfriend's house with him and his family. Weird, I know. Anyway, so she was always over there with them, and I thought that maybe she was just lonely. Wrong, of course. Now, of course, like any other relationship, mine wasn't perfect, but my boyfriend and I started having more problems than usual when my sister showed up. He was being super weird, and all the signs pointed to him cheating on me. Like for part 2. Part 2, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, my sister started spending more time at my boyfriend's house. I thought that she was lonely, but then my boyfriend started acting weird and all the signs pointing to him cheating on me. But I ignored it because I thought that him and I were in love like in the movies. And also, if I broke up with him, it would be like breaking up with his family because I loved them like my own. Fast forward, his sister ends up getting married and my sister and I were invited to the wedding. Fast forward, everybody gets drunk. We end up spending the night at his cousin's house and something was off with my boyfriend. He wasn't really talking to me. He wouldn't touch me. He pretty much acted like he was done with me. Well, then there's my sister who was flirting and touching him like it was normal. Fast forward a month, I asked my sister if anything happened between them and she goes, I think we slept together. So I confronted him about it and he just laughs and he's like, it wasn't that serious. So I end up breaking up with him and then I start finding unhealthy ways to cope, aka drinking. And eventually I got so lonely to the point where I forgave my sister. And then I started seeing this other guy and he was amazing, like for part 3. Part 3, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, I forgave my sister and then I got a new guy. He was amazing. And then my sister started begging to hang out with us. Now, of course, you would have thought that I learned from the first time, but I did not. I just completely ignored the signs that God gave me that she was a bad person. Okay, I guess not a bad person. She just didn't give a fuck about my feelings. Well, the one weekend his parents went away and they needed him to house sit. So he invited me over to house sit with him. And then guess who tags along? My sister. I mean, I guess I could have told her that she couldn't come, but at the same time, I was trying to be a forgiving person, okay? And I thought that she wouldn't do this shit to me again. Well, I was wrong because on the last night of house sitting, we all decided that we were gonna get drunk. And my sister made sure that I got more effed up than everybody else. I ended up actually getting alcohol poisoning and I almost died. But she didn't care. She was too focused on sleeping with the new guy. The worst part of this is they started dating and my mom was on her side. It's been 3 years and I'm still trying to forgive her and my
Am I the asshole for cutting off my husband's long hair because he cheated on me with my twin sister? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. Here's a little backstory on the bitch that is my sister. Growing up, she resented the fact that she was a twin. She thought she wasn't special because there was somebody that looked just like her. Therefore, she would call me her mini-me, her replica, and her shadow. My parents would constantly tell her that she should appreciate me because we have a twin connection. Oh, but she hates having the twin connection. My sister was very popular and really into sports. Whereas I was also popular, but I was more into boys and writing songs and singing. She also hated me for the fact that boys preferred me. But she was always in sweaty gym clothes. Both ended up getting into relationships around the same time, except her boyfriend was a total dick and cheated on her. I actually helped her get out of that relationship, but of course she never said thank you. I, on the other hand, was proposed to by my boyfriend. She also hated this. Had 7 months to plan our wedding and I knew I wanted to start an Instagram to document everything. 3 months into it, my Instagram blew up. And of course my sister hated this too. Started getting a bunch of hate comments. At first I didn't know what it was. It was weird. A few days later I'm talking to a friend of mine and she decides to tell me everything. My sister went ahead and created 5 fake accounts so she could bully me on Instagram. But of course I didn't confront my sister. I felt bad for her because I knew that she was hurting. So I decided to give her a pass. Try and remember this part for later. My husband, on the other hand, I thought was a good guy. When we were boyfriend and girlfriend, we saw each other twice a week. But really it was only because he wanted to do you know what. And I thought that meant he loved me. He would take me out to dinner and sometimes do special things, but it was always followed by a favor, if you know what I mean. I accepted that this is just how relationships are, and that I shouldn't be prudish about it. After we got married, my husband started changing, and my God, women say this so often. He got an amazing job. He was making around $500,000 a year. He bought us a beautiful new house 2 blocks away from my parents, and I loved this because I was close to my family. He also bought me a new car, and get this, he offered to pay for a boob job, which I said no to. This is when my husband decided that he wanted to become a model on Instagram. He started getting together with local photographers, and all he would basically do was upload thirst traps. Now, yes, my husband is pretty attractive. He's muscular, tall, and has really long blonde hair. Now, this long blonde hair is his safety blanket. He loves his long hair. He talks about his long hair all the time, so much so that I've come to hate it. But his Instagram was not growing, whereas mine was blowing up. And I knew that he began to envy me this. He started saying things like, my gosh, your content isn't that good. My pictures are better than yours. But like a good wife, I never said anything. This is when he started changing even more. He was asking for 3 meals a day. He wanted me to do his laundry, and he basically wanted me to serve him hand and foot without telling me all these things. He just started asking me to do it. There was no conversation. It was just a thing now. And I accepted it. I thought, well, he bought the house. He pays for the cars and the bills. I should be grateful and just serve him hand and foot. And then I started noticing other things. Anytime we would go to my parents' house, he would prioritize hanging out with my sister. At first, I appreciated it because I wanted them to get along. They were always together laughing and playfully punching each other. I thought it was cute. But then I noticed something really strange. Then I noticed my sister grabbing him. And when I tell you my sister is anti-affection, she hates touching people. But the way she touched him just made me realize that something was going on. My stomach fell so far down my ass, I thought it was gonna fall out. I had to act right then and there. I notice his phone is on the kitchen counter and I grab it. I go to Instagram and guess what I find? He was DMing with one of my sister's fake accounts that she created to bully me. While I'm standing behind them, I start going through all the messages. They had agreed to meet at our house where they did disgusting things. And the way they were speaking to each other was like that of a couple. Without thinking, I grab the kitchen scissors and I walk up to him. And I chop off as much hair as I could. Then show the messages to them and my parents. My parents started fighting with my sister and yelling at her. That's when she decided to deny everything. She said that I couldn't prove the Instagram account was hers. And since he never used her name in the messages, she can deny it. But my husband didn't. He fessed up to the whole thing. I made him go to our house and pack up a bag. He ended up getting his own apartment. I'm keeping the house. Sister kept denying it, but guess what? She went to live with him in the apartment. He doesn't want to give me a divorce. Instead, he came to my house and tried to forcefully kiss me. Told me he was kicking my sister out. What should I do? Self-care sister out.
Story time. My best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information. So Gavin and I had been best friends ever since we were little. We lived in the same neighborhood. And my parents and his grandparents were like pretty close, I guess. But like everybody in our neighborhood was close with each other. And I always had a huge crush on him. And I would try to like subtly tell him that I liked him. But he would always be like, ew, don't joke with me like that. Like, that's not true. And eventually, I just kind of got the hint that that was his way of telling me, I don't like you. Stop before I tell you, in a mean way. So when we were in middle school, he was always having these like 2-day relationships with all these girls and everything. And me, not so much, because sis didn't have a glow up until she reached like her sophomore year in high school. And the thing was, I wasn't that best friend who would be like, ew, don't date her, like she's ugly or anything like that. Like I would totally respect all of his relationships, even if they were 2 days long, but he would literally still block me. Well, the one day we were hanging out at his house, like for part 2. About how my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So like I said, the one night I was at his house and he was on my phone and he was asking me who all these guys were on my Snapchat. And I told him that I had been talking to them and he was just being super toxic. He was talking shit on every single one of them. So eventually I started dating this guy Trey, and after that he texted me saying that I was gross and everything else, when the next day he literally got a girlfriend. But weirdly enough, he didn't block me that time. He actually started texting me more, saying how him and his girlfriend were so happy together, da-da-da-da-da. And unlike him, I would be supportive. Well, the one night at 2 a.m. he came over my house and he was like, I don't have feelings for my girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, then why are you with her? And then he has the nerve to say, don't you get that I like you? Like, really? Well, eventually we cut off all communication and he was still with this girl. Well, the one night he asked me to come over and talk, and we ended up doing the nasty. And then he blocked me on everything after he said we should both leave our girlfriends and boyfriends. Well, I ended up telling his girlfriend what we did, and they also come to my family cookouts.
Story time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like, their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence, so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals. Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, the one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Like, for
Had a ton of lip filler over the years.
I'm recreating Ariana's Vogue tutorial.
Hi Vogue, it's Ariana Grande.
I don't have the exact product she's using. I have similar ones, but I do have the REM concealer. Have I tried it before? I guess I did, but I don't remember.
The Sarah Ford BioCell Oxygen Serum. Sarah's been doing La Mer, and I'm going to mix it with some SPF.
I will say I'm not going to mix my SPF in because it dilutes filters in it that protect your skin. So don't ever mix your SPF with anything. Just apply it as your last step in your skincare routine. She's not prepping her lips, but I need some immediate prep. So I'm using the Gizu lip oil.
REM Beauty Under Eye Cooling Balm. This is one of my favorite. Our brand new REM Beauty Sweetener Foundation.
I don't ever use a beauty sponge anymore. I only use brushes for my skin. I prefer it. She has way more coverage, so I'm gonna add more coverage. I like it. She covers her entire face with foundation, like her eyelids and everything. I never do that. You see, it just makes I don't like that. An extra layer around such already wrinkly skin. I have been blending with this for like 10 minutes and I feel like I'm not done. This is why I love my Anissa beauty brushes, because God, it's so quick with those brushes, the concealer, the foundation, all of that. And with the sponge, you're just like,
I'm gonna use Sweetener Concealer. My shade is Light 4G.
the concealer looks pretty good in the pot. And then back in with the sponge because she's using a sponge throughout the whole thing. Let's see what it really looks like. The concealer looks really nice. I don't like how my lids feel so covered up. No!
Start to fill in my eyebrows.
I don't really bake like this, and she leaves it on for a long time.
I kind of have eyebrows now.
She uses a lot of contour.
I'm gonna do my little button nose trick that I like. Using our REM Beauty Miss Mercury highlight. I'm not flipping you off, but maybe, you know? That is over here. My whole lid basically, but also I'm gonna use our multi-use eye stick in Intergalactic. Dior Rosy Glow. Something I do with my blush that also makes no sense is I like go in my eyebrows and my this and kind of everywhere. Over the years, used makeup as a disguise or as something to hide behind. Full transparency as a beauty person, as I do my lips. Had a ton of lip filler over the years.
Good for you, Ariana, for being honest about that. It is so hard for celebrities to say the truth about filler and Botox, so good for you. This is a great PR move for you, girl.
Botox, I stopped in 2018 because I just felt so too much. I just felt like hiding, you know? Didn't expect to get emotional. I'm gonna make this line a little heavier because I know that's what the children want.
I really, really like this. You guys, this is all for PR. I get it. She has to do it. She is being trashed all over social media right now, so she needs to come out with some positive, relatable content, and that is her speaking about her filler, finally fessing up to it, because I know that she's denied it in the past. What do you guys think about all that? I think it's the perfect move for Miss Ariana Grande. Good for you, girl. I cannot wait to see what you do next. Bye!
Story time about how I was dating the school shooter. Yeah. So a little background information. I was a sophomore whenever this all happened, and it was around October. Well, the one day I was sitting at lunch with my group of friends. We're all sitting there having a good time when one of my friends dares me to go over and sit with this one kid. And he was sitting alone, he was kind of shy, and of course I did because they had offered me $10, guys. Can't beat that. So I go over there, we start talking, and I realize that he's actually really nice. And he's really hot. I never really saw what he looked like because he was always wearing hoodies during school. Anyways, we started hanging out more, and eventually he said that he liked me and we started dating. The relationship seemed pretty perfect. Well, 6 months in, I think he started to trust me more, because he had told me about this one group of girls that he absolutely hated. This group of girls just happened to be my friends. I didn't tell him that I was friends with these girls because they were considered controversial. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was dating the school shooter. Like I said, I had never told him that I was friends with these girls because they were controversial, but he would go on for hours about how much he hated these girls. He went as far to say that he wanted to kill them. I didn't think anything of it at first, because him and I had more of a sarcastic sense of humor, but he started to sound more and more serious every time that he would talk about it. Well, after us dating for 10 months, he calls me the one night, and he starts telling me about how he's going to shoot up the school. He had told me his entire plan of how he was going to do this. Now, he must have thought that we were like ride or die relationship, when in reality, I was recording everything that he was saying. After we got off the phone, I wrote an email to all of the office staff in my school, but I fell asleep and never finished the email. I woke up the next morning, finished it. I had texted my friends not to go to school that day. I had already missed the bus. I rode my bike to school that day. I ran to the principal's office. Nobody was there. And that's whenever I heard shots in the hallway.
My husband and I had an affair with the same man. Welcome to the confessional series where you guys send me your confessionals through here and I tell them on TikTok so you can get some genuine advice. I'm 27 years old and my husband is 34. Before we got married, I knew that he was bisexual, so this was not a problem to me. Last year, we both decided to get in shape and signed up for the same gym. Okay, I see where this is going. The way this palette has a chokehold on me. And of course, my husband insisted on getting me a personal trainer. My husband is no longer attracted to me, so he needs me to get in shape. Over the years, I've gained about 20 pounds, and my husband's always telling me how I used to look was so much better. Is he Brad Pitt? The personal trainer I was assigned at the gym was really good looking. I was super happy about this because I knew my husband was going to get jealous, but not the kind of jealousy I was expecting. I kept noticing that my husband would stare at the trainer every single time he came around. And then of course my husband requested he train him too. Every single day we'd go to the gym together, he would train for half an hour and then I would train for half an hour. This is when I started noticing some funny things. Just to piss my husband off, I would periodically go check on him while he was working out. Good for you, sis. Be petty. Be petty. My husband would just look me up and down and ask, "What are you doing?" And then I'd say, "Just come in and check on you." Without fail, every time I showed up to just check on them, they would stop their conversation. It's like they were trying to hide what they were saying. What I did next was absolutely next level bitch. I completely changed the way I started dressing to the gym. I started wearing thongs and short shorts. And it worked. I got the attention of my trainer and we started flirting. From there, it was easy. All I had to do was pretend I liked him. Eventually, I actually did start liking him, and that's when I decided to propose the affair. Problematic queen over here. My husband was so busy getting in shape and flirting with the trainer that he didn't even notice our affair. A couple of months later, I was in the best shape of my life. My husband was also in pretty good shape, but we were not getting along at all. We were constantly fighting, and every time we went to the gym, it was a huge argument. He was always upset because I was always flirting with the trainer. And if you're wondering, my husband and I did have an open relationship in the past. During this time, my husband was hooking up with men and women as well. When I told my husband about the affair, he just laughed. I was so shocked at his behavior, I asked him what was so funny. He looks at me and says, "I've been a trainer as well." And here's something I forgot to mention. I was giving him money. I was basically this man's sugar mama. Though I'm only 3 years older than the trainer. That's when my husband says, "How much money have you been giving him?" We were both giving him about $1,000 a month. Damn, this trainer got lucky with you guys. Couldn't even get mad at each other because we thought it was so funny that we had been both having an affair with the same man and both giving him money. It actually brought us back together and we decided to make peace. My husband said that he would end the affair with the trainer and I told him that I would too. But that was a lie. I'm pretty sure my husband's having another affair with another man from the gym. This man also goes to the gym and I see them talking all the time. I got jealous for a few days, but then I got over it. Queen. I felt a little sus about the trainer, so I told him that I wasn't able to give him money anymore. Guess what he did? He told me that he couldn't see me anymore. His girlfriend had found out about the relationship. So I got really angry and I told him that my husband and I knew that he was having an affair with both of us and that we were both giving him money. And I also told him that if he didn't want me to ask for the money, then he should quit the job so that I can feel at peace at the gym. So he quit. I'm definitely looking to start another affair. I know what you guys are thinking. We should probably just get divorced. But no, we're happy, we have money, and we can have affairs. I don't really need your advice. I just wanted to tell you. Oh my gosh.
Story time about why I will never go on a date ever again. So a little background information. I was 20 years old and I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. Now, I had just gotten out of this relationship like a month before I went on this date. And I had absolutely no intentions of looking for a guy, but I was up for, flirting with them and going on some dates. Well, the one day I am at the gym in my apartment building, and there's this guy who's walking on the treadmill next to me, and I get off, and he gets off at the same time, and he starts up a conversation with me, and we had started talking about how I never went jet skiing. And he was like, "Oh, well, do you want to go jet skiing on Tuesday?" So I just decided to put myself out there. I said yes, and bam, we had a date the next day. So I meet him at his car, and we go on this date. He did end up paying, which was very nice. But anyways, we're on the jet ski, and we're in the middle of the water. I was kind of weirded out because I didn't think that we would have to be that close with each other. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never go on a date ever again. So like I said, he takes us to the beach, we get on the jet ski, and it's just 2 of us on one jet ski, which I was low-key uncomfortable about because I thought that we were each going to get our own, so there would be no touching involved. And after the shit that he pulled, I definitely wish that I had my own jet ski. So apparently he's jet skied all of his life, you know, he knew how to do this. Well, we go pretty far out from land because he knew the people and he didn't have to listen to any of the rules. He offered to let me drive it, but I did not want to because of the fact that he was going super fast and I did not want to do that shit. Well, listen to this. He flips us off the jet ski, right? And when he does that, all of a sudden it hits me. I am in the middle of the ocean. Like there's sharks, there's other things, there's creepy things, mysterious things we don't even know about. I literally start crying and he thinks it's funny. He gets on the jet ski and literally drives away. I'm not even joking. He left me there for 3 minutes. I could barely see land. And then he ended up coming back and he was like, ha ha ha, da da da. I never saw him.
My best friend always projects her insecurities onto me. Should I break up with her? My best friend and I have known each other for exactly 2 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. We're both Latinas and we come from really big families. I have 2 other sisters and we get along really well. We always hype each other up and have each other's backs. A few months after I started my friendship with my best friend, let's call her Lucia. Lucia started showing some really toxic qualities. Sometimes I think I'm just reading too much into it or overreacting. So you let me know. First of all, she would start talking bad about my sisters in front of me. She would make comments like, wow, your sister's gained weight, or wow, your sister has cellulite. When she first did this, I would just defend my sisters, but then I realized that just made her want to keep talking more trash. So if she ever said anything about my sisters, I wouldn't say anything. At the time our friendship started, I had a really big crush on this guy. He and I went to the same gym and I never had the courage to speak to him, not until my sister convinced me to. I finally spoke to him at the gym and we actually hit it off. We would work out together every now and then and he finally asked me out on a date. The day of our date, my best friend came over to my house, and while I was getting ready, she started saying really weird things. At first, she told me that I should wash my hair because it looked oily. I told her my hair was freshly washed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see her reflection and she just rolled her eyes at me. This is when things started clicking. Part 2 is up. My best friend projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? I could see through the mirror that she had rolled her eyes at me. Then she started making other comments about my appearance. Mind you, I'm getting ready for a date. When I showed her the outfit that I was gonna wear, she said it was too revealing and that I would probably scare him off. Wasn't even revealing, it just showed my legs. It was a cute sundress with a cardigan on top. I told her I thought I looked cute. And then she said, allá tu amiga. As I'm finishing up my hair and my makeup, she says, wow, you're gonna wear that much makeup? But the way she said it was so aggressive, I actually took off the lipstick I was wearing. Instead, I just put on lip balm. I looked at her and she had a smile on her face. It was like she was happy she finally got to me. The date went really well and he actually turned into my boyfriend a few weeks later. And guess what? My best friend started judging everything about him. The first time she met him, she started saying, wow, I think he's balding, which he isn't. And even if he was, I wouldn't care. She also started making comments about him staring at other girls, something I never even noticed that he did, and I would know I'm with him all the time. It's like she was trying to plant all these insecurities in my head. One day, Lucia and my boyfriend and I are in his car. We were heading to the movie theaters when Lucia says, wow, you put on way too much perfume. It's giving me a headache. That's when my boyfriend told her that if it bothered her that much, she should just go home. And out of nowhere, Lucia swung her fist at him. She actually tried to attack him. Part 3 is up. My best friend always projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? That's when she started swinging at my boyfriend. Luckily, I yelled at her and she stopped. It's like she was upset at me for yelling at her for trying to hit my boyfriend. That's when my boyfriend kicked her out of the car and I asked him to calm down. I got out of the car with Lucia and asked her to calm down. That's when she told me that I needed to break up with him and that he was clearly abusive. I told her he was just defending me. Then she said, he doesn't need to defend you. I'm only saying this because I care about you. Then she called herself an Uber and left. My boyfriend and I went to the movie theaters and we had a really nice night. Here's some more examples of her projecting on me. While we were getting ready for a friend's birthday party, she started pointing out some stuff on my body. She said, your elbows are really dark. You need to fix that. Another time I decided to get some highlights and she said they looked horrible on me. She said I looked like a JLo wannabe. Luckily, I didn't care and I just kept the highlights. Mind you, 2 months later, she got the exact same highlights. Now, I know that she cares about me because she does have my back. She'll help me with anything I need, honestly. And I wonder if I'm overreacting, but I don't think so. I just don't know how to tell her that she's toxic. She makes me feel bad. What should I do?
Storytime about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information. I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there. I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. and then we would look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot, and he really likes me, I really like him, and we went to this football game at his school, and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends, and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. About how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game, and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends, and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point, we had already been talking for 2 months, and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what can make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it, and he told me that he was going to break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just going to wait for him to break it off with her, and I'm still going to talk to him. So eventually, he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was going to break up with you. That day, he called me, and he was like, hey, do you want to...
My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my Storytime, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house. Which, yes, is totally amazing. But that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my Storytime, is on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account, so it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it, but I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister, and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my Storytime, it's on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. I haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?
My boyfriend's brother got me pregnant and now I don't know what to do. 3 months ago, I started dating this new guy. He was so sweet and good looking. He took me to meet his very rich family right away. I walked into their beautiful house and his brother came right up to me and gave me a kiss. Now let me say this. My boyfriend and his brother are almost exactly identical. They are both extremely good looking. They're both super muscular and really good shape. They both have long brown hair. They both have green eyes and tan skin. I mean, they are virtually perfect looking. Here's the difference. My boyfriend is so sweet, while his brother is more of a bad boy. Flirts with me in front of his whole family. And they all think it's hilarious, even my boyfriend. But here's the problem. The more I visited their house, the more I realized I was getting butterflies every time I saw his brother. And it's like his brother knew it. He would look deep into my eyes while we had conversations. He always looked like he was about to kiss me. One day my mother-in-law decided to take me shopping to Bloomingdale's. She ended up buying me a $2,000 necklace. These people have money. When we got back to the mansion, I decided to put the necklace on. But as I was struggling, my boyfriend's brother decided to help me out. Slowly put the necklace on me. Then he started smelling my neck. Then he started kissing my neck. And then he started kissing me and we started making out. I couldn't help it. Part 2 is up. That's when my brother-in-law started kissing my neck. Then he made his way to my mouth, and we started making out, passionately. I physically couldn't stop myself from kissing him. After we kissed for a minute, we realized we were in the kitchen. Anybody could walk in on us. That's when he grabbed my hand and took me outside by the pool. He took me behind the pool house, and then we just started kissing more. We were back there for like 20 minutes. So my phone rings, and it's my boyfriend, his brother. I push him off, and I run back into the house. For the rest of the night, he just kept staring at me, and I basically just tried to avoid his gaze. We didn't talk about the fact that we kissed at all for like 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, I found myself alone in their house again. He comes up to me and starts trying to kiss me again, but this time I did have a little more self-control. He did something I never expected. He picked me up straight off the couch, threw me over his shoulder, and took me to his bedroom. Then he started kissing me more. And again, I gave in. I couldn't help myself. It's like I physically can't stop myself from touching him. He kissed on his bed, and then it happened. Yep, we did it. It was amazing and magical, but I instantly felt remorse. Let me clear something up though. I am still very, very attracted to my boyfriend. I mean, if anything, I would have rather done it with him, but there's just something about his brother that I find intoxicating. I instantly felt sick to my stomach. I left his room and went back home. My boyfriend called me and asked me why I wasn't waiting for him at his house. I told him that I didn't feel sick, so he came over and brought me chicken soup. I just did the dirty with his brother and he brought me chicken soup? You can imagine how guilty I felt. 2 weeks later, I wasn't getting my period. So I took a test and it turns out I'm pregnant. And I'm pretty sure it's his brother's. I broke the news to him and his family that I'm pregnant and they're so happy. He proposed to me and we're engaged now. His brother, on the other hand, still tries to kiss me. But he just got a new girlfriend. We'll never tell the truth though. Or should I?
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out. And my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night. Especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together. And we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up. Because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut. And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, yeah, that's definitely a hickey because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, I'm telling your mom, and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, you know, burnt myself with the curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck. Which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, all right, show it to me. And I'm like, show you what? She's like, don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation. And I was like, Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron. And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, you better tell your mother the truth right now. Da 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 da. So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, so you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck? And she was like, that's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah. So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the SheGlam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the SheGlam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
Story time about how I married my father. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and trigger warning for this. My mom and dad got pregnant with me when they were only 16. They were both young and irresponsible. My mom wanted to keep me, but my dad didn't. My dad basically broke up with my mom and told her that if she wanted to have me, she would have to do it on her own. So my mom did. Luckily, my grandma helped her out a lot and she was able to stay in school. As a baby, my dad would visit me every now and then, but he wasn't really involved in my life as far as my mom says. Here's a little backstory on my dad. My dad grew up in a really strict family and he was expected to graduate and become a doctor. So that's pretty much exactly what he did. During the time that he was in college, he really didn't come see my mom or I, but of course my mom and him kept in contact. When my dad, or should I say husband, graduated from medical school, he finally got married. And of course this was hard for my mom because she thought eventually they would get back together. By the time my dad remarried, I was about 12 years old. I didn't have a relationship with him at the time and it didn't bother me. I was so busy with friends in school I never really thought about him. Not until I turned 14. This is when things started changing and I told my mom that I really wanted to talk to my dad. So he and I started talking on the phone and eventually he came to visit me. But things started changing when I turned 19. He actually ended up getting a divorce and he and I would spend more and more time together alone. Part 2 is story time about how I married my father. Disclaimer, this is not my story time and trigger warning for this. When I turned 19 is when my dad and I started spending more time together alone. Or should I say my husband? Keep in mind, I really didn't have a relationship during my teen years. We only spoke on the phone a few times and he would visit every now and then, but not a lot. When I turned 19, I was living in college and I was closer to my dad. So I decided to reach out to him and ask him if he wanted to have dinners every now and then, and he said yes. The first time we went out to dinner, we actually had a lot of fun, and it really didn't feel like I was hanging out with my dad. It was more like I was hanging out with a friend. We just didn't have that father-daughter dynamic. We would meet up almost every single weekend, and our relationship was actually very friendly. We would make each other laugh and talk about everything. And this is when we realized that we had a lot in common. Eventually, he asked me if I was dating anyone, and I told him I wasn't. When I got home, I started realizing that I wasn't thinking about my dad like a dad. I was thinking about him like a man. So the next time I saw him, I decided to tell him that. And that's when he told me that he didn't see me like a daughter either. It took a lot of courage for me to tell him this. So that's when things started to really change between us. Every time we would hang out after that, it was more like a date. We started getting to know each other and he would hold my hand every now and then. And a few weeks later, we had our first kiss. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I married my father. Disclaimers is not my story time and trigger warning for this. After our first kiss, everything changed. We didn't think of each other as father-daughter. And of course, our relationship began to get more serious. And one thing we kept discussing was, should we tell our family or should we just keep it secret? So we kept it secret for almost a full year. I told my mom that I was dating someone, but I wouldn't tell her who it was. Also, a little side note, my mom and dad didn't have any contact between them at this time. My mom was actually married to someone else and they were very happy. But for me, it was getting to the point where I needed to tell somebody. Because yes, part of me felt that this was really wrong, but the other part of me felt that it was just right. I had never met anybody like him before. So I decided to tell my grandma, and she nearly had a heart attack. She called my mom right away and told her the truth. That's when my mom came over and we talked for a few hours. I explained to them everything and they still didn't agree with me. My mom called my dad and they got into an epic fight. I was totally expecting this, but it really hurt. My mom and grandma were totally against the relationship. That's when they told me that they would never speak to me again if I kept the relationship going. A few months months later, we decided to get married privately. I didn't tell my mom. She actually found out through my best friend, who was totally against our relationship as well. And she pretty much tells my mom everything I tell her. It's been 2 years since we got married, and part of me still feels guilty and like I did something really wrong. But now it's getting even worse because I actually met someone who's my age and is not related to me. But I don't have the heart to break up with my husband/dad. I told my mom about this new guy and she really wants me to get a divorce. I feel like all along I was just looking for the love of a man because I didn't get that from my dad. Now that I'm seeing someone else, I'm realizing how wrong what I did was. But I don't want to break my dad/husband's heart. How can I fix this? What should I do?
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information. I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner. I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house. Part 3 about why I will never ever ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I picked up the stack of towels and a camera that was recording fell out of it. And while I was home later that night, I was waiting for my mom to get home when I got a call from Will. And if you don't remember who that is, that's Autumn's dad. And of course I wasn't going to answer the phone because I was super weirded out and low-key scared. But then he left a voicemail. And he was like, hey, so I know you have the camera. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm gonna need it back. I can pay you whatever you want, and I would prefer that we don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes I'm just really amazed at how stupid people are because as soon as my mom got home, I showed her the camera and I let her listen to the voicemail. So my mom called over Autumn's mom. So they called the police, and Autumn's mom kept trying to call Will, but his phone was going straight to voicemail. And she was like, yeah, he begged me not to come over here whenever you called. It's been a week since this happened, and Autumn's dad is currently running from the cops.